Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 4, Section 4, China's First Dynasties. And as we go along, make sure you fill in the information that you need. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of early China, and sometime in the near future, we are going to talk a little bit more about China and its kind of rise from ancient times into the modern era, as well as that of its neighbors in parts of Eastern Asia. So, this is kind of a little taste of that. So, take a look at number one. The geography of China affected its early civilizations in that the long rivers, fertile soil, temperate climates, and isolated valleys helped this civilization grow. China is naturally isolated due to the Gobi Desert, which is, if you take a look at the map below, kind of in the northern part of China, kind of in the mid region there. At one point in time, when China included parts of Mongolia, it would also be in parts of that nation as well. But this desert separated China from the Western lands, as well as the Himalaya Mountains separating China from South Asia. So these barriers, for the most part, were able to keep China, for the most part, very isolated from any outsiders for many, many years. And if we take a look at this map here, as we go along, we're going to talk a little bit about the Shang dynasty, the Zhao dynasty, and a little bit of the Qing dynasty, a little bit of that, but we're going to probably mention more things in the near future. And for the most part, if you look at like the modern day boundaries of China, a good portion of these early dynasties were really kind of located in the eastern half of what is now present day China. So, flooding along the Changjiang River, or also known as the Yangtze, and also the Henghe River, which we've mentioned before, being kind of known as the Yellow River, helped deposit rich soils in these river valleys, leading to pretty decent agriculture. Below here are a couple pictures of both of these river valleys. If you take a look at the Yangtze River Valley, this is one area where man is really kind of reshaping the geography here. In recent years, there have been dams that have been placed here, and as a result of that, many people have been, for the most part, forced to move or relocate due to those man-made changes. Below that is a picture of the Yellow River. And if you take a look at the river itself, it looks very muddy, which is part of the namesake, very similar to that of the Missouri River here in the United States. So, number 4, during the Shang dynasty, China's government, for the most part, was a monarchy. And number 5, the kings of the Shang dynasty were able to keep order by appointing governors to rule distant parts of their kingdom. And by doing so, they were able to, for the most part, be able to centralize their power. And number 6, ancestor worship was the focus of religion during the Shang dynasty. So when a loved one would die, you would basically leave offerings to them, and you would worship their spirits. And number 7, the explanation of the oracle bone readings led to the earliest examples of writing. And if you take a look here, there's a tortoise shell, and on that there's some iconic writing, or picto writing, if you want to call it that, which supposedly are one of these oracles. And in a way, a lot of times these are used to kind of predict things that would happen into the future. But most of these explanations were actually written on the bones themselves. And in number 8, some of the achievements of the Shang dynasty were that China's writing was able to be established. You had advances in bronze and the making of tools and weapons out of that. You had the creation of a precise calendar and the creation of a money system that all came about during this time period. And number 9, China changed during the Zhao dynasty due to the use of iron. You know, we've mentioned a little bit about the fact that in Central Asia and Southwest Asia, kind of in the Middle East, you had the rise of certain empires that were using iron, it's probably likely that, some of these people had been sharing information through traders and travelers. And iron, for the most part, was obviously something that was being utilized in this part of the world. Population growth continued during the Zhou dynasty, and you had the beginnings of the religions of Confucianism and Taoism. And number 10, the mandate of heaven stated that the gods would support a just ruler and that these gods would not allow corrupt leaders to hold power. Mandates are a term that we use even in today's political science. It basically means that people have been allowed to rule. And in a sense, this mandate that is coming down to the Zhou dynasty is one that's coming from above. In a sense, it's kind of like coming from God, or in this case of these folks, the gods. In number 11, the Zhou dynasty was stronger than previous forces because they had implemented the use of iron weapons. And you can see a crossbow located down on this slide. They also were using catapults to fling certain things, and that could be rocks and such at their enemies. And finally, the use of cavalry. And number 12, the introduction of iron into China led to economic growth and a stronger army as a result of that. When we talk about Confucianism and Taoism, we need to focus on that just a little bit. But Confucius is kind of the founder of Confucianism, and he believed that people should treat each other humanely and express love and respect to one another. And in a sense, the foundation of Confucianism is all about relationships and how you should treat each other in a variety of different relationships, like how a ruler treats their subject, or how a father treats their son, or how an older sibling treats their younger sibling. Everybody has a place. In the family, father probably ranks higher than the child, and thus it's the duty of the child to follow their father. In the case of siblings, it means that the older sibling is in a position of leadership, and the younger sibling should not question them. So if people understood these relationships, they would be able to get along with one another, and that hence is kind of the foundation of Confucianism. There isn't really per se gods or goddesses here, but it is about following the relationship rules. In number 14, the key beliefs of Taoism. Taoism is a limitless force that is a part of all creation. And the balance of what we call the yin and the yang is reflected of this harmony in nature. The founder of this phase was a man named Laozi, who you see below. And if you take a look to the right, there is a symbol of the yin yang. But in a sense, it's talking about like good and evil, talking about like the forces of nature, like winter and summer and such. And so kind of to understand Tao, the way, this is achieved through, Wu Yi, or non-action, meaning that Tao is the source of existence and the root of all things seen and unseen, and that it's achieved through a solitary life and meditation, acting thoughtfully and not impulsively, and the non-action, living in peace, living with simplicity and tranquility, meaning peace, and acting in harmony with nature. When we talk about Confucianism, Confucius was known for his sayings, and these are just a variety of different ones, like they must often change those who would be constant in happiness or wisdom, or everything has its beauty, but not everyone sees it, or he who learns but does not think is lost, and he who thinks but does not learn is in great danger. Or our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in getting up every time we do. Or I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. And wherever soever you go, go with all your heart. All those are kind of attributed back to Confucian. Now, we did not spend a lot of time talking about the Qin dynasty, but in time we will. But probably the most noted discovery of this dynasty was the army of the terracotta soldiers, which you see pictured below here. This was built by Qin Shi Huang during the Qing dynasty. And as we go on, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the future here. So thank you very much.